Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of the Phoenix Podcast with me, Jen Coffey, your manifestation coach, your confidence coach, your biggest cheerleader, cheering you on as you go from where you are now to where you want to be, to where you intend to be, and therefore, ultimately, where you're meant to be. Now, here we are in our 4th episode, and we've covered a lot in those first 3, at least it feels like it to me. Most recently, talking about creating that vision board. And I hope that you've gotten it started. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, please do. It's such a critical but fun way to put into physical form your goals, your dreams, before they are officially a part of your life. You'd be surprised by how much it can accelerate you toward that goal. So a reminder, if you haven't started it yet, make that a point to do this week. Now, this week, I do want to also thank you. The responses, the messages that I've been receiving from episodes 1 through 3 have been so encouraging. Keep them coming. Post your comments on whatever platform you're listening or watching to, and be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you can get notified when new episodes come out weekly. All right, let's get to work. What are we talking about this week? Well, we're going to talk about, finally, some of the obstacles that appear on the path of making our dreams reality. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. And those obstacles can come in different forms. They can easily thwart us, especially if we're in a period of self-doubt. But as I often do, I'd like to reframe one obstacle in particular and show you that it actually isn't an obstacle at all. It's a sign that you're on the right path. Now, as we have in the previous 3 episodes, I'm going to keep a good thing going. I'm going to start it with a quote. And you can tell already from previous quotes that I love my American authors. This week, it comes to us from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Again, we're going back to our high school readings, right? But a lot of those were really good. And this one, I'm going to give it to you in its abridged version, the quote that maybe you've heard many times before or has resonated with you in the past. But I also want to read to you the expanded version because I think it's even more inspiring and encouraging, and it relates to everything we're going to talk about in this episode. So Ralphie says, "To be great is to be misunderstood. To be great is to be misunderstood." And you may have seen that on Instagram. You may have seen it posted and gone, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense, right? Like some of the most influential people have been misunderstood in their lifetimes. Now, if you don't remember the expanded quote, the multi-sentence quote, I'm going to pick up my phone and read it to you because I don't quite have it memorized, but it's a good one. Ralph says, "Is it so bad then to be misunderstood? Pythagoras was misunderstood, and Socrates, and Jesus, and Luther, and Copernicus, and Galileo, and Newton, and every pure and wise spirit that ever took flesh. To be great is to be misunderstood." So, why is this relevant this week? Well, this week, we're going to talk about the naysayers. We're going to talk about as you move forward and start to see your ideas, your goals materialize, or at the very least, you start to see the signs that they're on their way. As it becomes impossible to hide that this dream of yours is becoming reality, you're going to have the naysayers. And in this episode, I'm going to break down the different categories of naysayers, and then we'll talk about 5 steps to help you break free from the hold that those naysayers have had on you. And we'll finish with 5 words I encourage you to keep with you at all times as a reminder when the naysayers pop up. Sounds like a lot, but we're going to get to it. And I promise you, it's going to be fun. So that quote talks about and probably references in 1, 2, or all the names that you heard, individuals whom you admire. And if none of those are individuals whom you admire, think about the ones that you do. Almost certainly, those people at some point were misunderstood. Why? Well, because they were breaking new ground. They were revolutionizing thought and philosophy. They were shaping the course of human history. And that isn't done smoothly. And it's not done without resistance. In fact, a pretty good indicator that good change is happening is when there is resistance, right? So when you think about on your path as you go from, being happily single to deciding that you want that life partner, or deciding that the career you're in right now no longer feeds you in the way that it did before. When you decide to take that leap and start that new business, when you decide to write that book, when you decide to change your personal style, you'll be met with individuals who either misunderstand or, frankly, straight up don't want to see you succeed. And that doesn't mean you aren't meant to succeed. In most cases, it means the opposite. But as Ralph said, every person who is pure and wise will be misunderstood. That's important, that part right there, because it means these individuals come from a place of good, of pure-heartedness, of positivity, of wisdom. And when you have those particular elements in any of your goals, they're positive, they're beneficial, they help you and potentially others. They come from a place of wisdom, i.e., not just book wisdom, but connection to your intuition. When your goals come from those places of purity and connection and wisdom to your higher self, well, not only are they meant to be, but they will be misunderstood. And when people misunderstand, as social media indicates, they love to talk about it, right? And it's good if you're misunderstanding and want to understand. But a lot of the naysayers, of course, they just want to be the loudest voices in the room. So let's get into it. When I say naysayers, I'm not just talking about people who very loudly proclaim that they are opposed to what you want to do. I'm not just talking about bullies. I'm not just talking about that very competitive coworker who's trying to thwart you when you're on that way to your promotion. The naysayers, the obstacles in human form, they come in different shapes and sizes and from different backgrounds. Some are kind of sneaky. Let's talk about it. So I've broken it into 3 different categories, and they're pretty general by design, because making them general helps you to kind of specifically identify in your own life who these obstacles in human form might be. And some of them may surprise you as you're on that path towards your higher reality. All right, so the first category are the well-intentioned people who want the best for you. So this, of course, could come via parents, children, grown offspring. It could be a person that you consider your very best friend. It could be coworkers. It could be truly anybody, people in your religious community, people that up until now you've always seen as the people who want you to succeed, who want you to be happy. Now, those very people, when they don't even realize it necessarily, may be saying things that are counter to what you want to do to try to keep you safe. Here's a great example. When I went from being in the retail business for the entirety of my adult life to shifting gears and deciding that I wanted to be in TV, I had some relatives who were very vocal about cautioning me. Well, Jen, it's a jungle out there, and it's, every man and woman for themselves. It's very backstabbing in that work culture, and eventually you'll age out, and all the things that we might hear if we want to enter the entertainment industry. If you're an aspiring model, you're going to have people tell you that, are you sure you're tall enough? Or, gosh, what if you don't make it and you traveled all the way to New York, signed with an agency, paid for your headshots, and then what? Or you want to start a restaurant and somebody in your family says, only, what is it? I don't know, 1% of restaurants are successful. When we think about it, the things that they're saying on paper could very well be true. That only 1% of restaurants ever succeed, or a sliver of the people who try out to be models actually get the job. I've been talking about auditions that are happening right now in the TV shopping world, and I've heard many people say, I'd love to try, but I've been told that I'm too old. Well, the ones who are coming to you and telling you that these are the reasons why that might not come to be, when you think about it, they are just trying to keep you safe. It doesn't mean that what they're saying is necessarily true or true enough that you should set down your arms when it comes to fighting for that dream. It does instead mean they don't want to see you disappointed. They don't want to see you sad. They want to keep you safe. But we all know that sometimes safe can be a very dangerous place in itself. Safe can mean never leaving your house. It can mean staying in the job that you have for the rest of your life. And it could mean accumulating, and I don't like this word, but it could mean accumulating a lot of regret. And regret, in my opinion, is way more dangerous than going for what you want. And no, I don't mean jumping off a cliff and hoping that you literally grow wings on the way down. Instead, I mean putting out those resumes, putting out the auditions, starting to gather the information about starting that restaurant, taking the steps forward. Practical, wise, researched, there's that word wise again, right? Pure. But still adventurous. Adventure can have a far bigger payoff than safety and staying where you are, potentially, could be. So consider that when we think about those naysayers, right? They're good people. They're not all passive aggressive, and they want to keep you safe. It doesn't, however, mean that they're necessarily right. Okay, second category. This one's a lot easier to spot. It's the ill-intentioned people who are threatened by you, right? So we have over here our family members, our friends who are listing all the reasons why your dream may not work, hoping that you stay safe. And then you have the ones who just straight up want to see you fail. And they probably wouldn't say that out loud. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say, it would give me great gratification if you failed, all right? And if that were the case, well, they're so ill-intentioned that why am I listening to them to begin with? Instead, it could be the kind of passive-aggressive people who are saying, well, what do you mean you're going to leave us? This is your home. This is your hometown. Or, wait, I thought this was your dream. It's not your dream anymore? What are you saying? Like, I banked on that this was your dream and now you're leaving. Or the ones who say, well, you're working out 5 times a week now. I thought you were comfortable in your body the way it was. I thought you were a person who was all about body positivity. Comments like that are not the truth about you. Comments like that are in most cases, I think you know what the rest of the sentence is. They are truths about the person who is speaking those sentences. They're threatened by you succeeding, by you growing, by you stretching out of your comfort zone because they're not ready to do that. I'm not saying these people are evil, but there's definitely an intention there that isn't pure and wise. They're saying about themselves, I'm not ready for that. They're saying about themselves, the comfort zone is my safe space and I want to stay here. Or they could be people who looked up to you. They looked up to you while you were going through your journey, thinking that the journey was very similar to theirs. And when your journey didn't look like theirs anymore, it made them uncomfortable because that's when they're left to think for themselves. All of these things are very common human qualities. And again, I'm not saying it makes them a bad person. But what I do know is that it doesn't make you a person who is on the wrong path. So be on the lookout or the listen out for folks like that and ask yourself, are what they're saying to you truths about yourself, or are they more likely truths about themselves? Okay, our third category of naysayers, and you may not like to hear this, but that third category is ourselves and our own insecurities. This is every single human on the face of the planet. I don't care how appearingly confident they are. I don't care how they carry themselves in a room. I actually do care, because I hope you carry yourself in a room with that look of appeared confidence, right? We'll work on that. Every single person, no matter how much you look up to, admire, and respect them, has insecurities. They manage them differently. But a naysayer does not have to be a person external to you. The naysayer can be you yourself. Now, this too may not come as a well-received comment, but I would say our insecurities likely outnumber the number of external naysayers that we have. And I'm actually speaking for myself here too. We all have that inner voice that hopefully, for at least part of the day, is telling us that we're doing a great job, that you look good when you look in the mirror, and that you're strong and all of your dreams are valid. That same voice, though, also says things that are not true. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not thin enough. You're not educated enough. I mean, I don't need to tell you them. They've probably played in your head already. I did an Instagram post about this when I was talking about those auditions, those host auditions, and how many people had shared with me that they were afraid to audition because of their age. I invite you to think about where those insecurities truly come from. Now, if I ask you where your insecurities come from, you may say something like, a parent growing up who told me that I needed to lose weight, or the media, the pictures that I looked at in magazines, diet culture from the 80s and 90s. That's me for sure. It may come from the school that you went to, and maybe you had some really strict instructors and they were berating you about your grades. I don't know. Everybody is different. But no matter where those insecurities originated, here's what I do know. They didn't originate just out of your own brain spontaneously. Almost never is that the case. All of those insecurities come to us through conditioning externally, right? And if that's the case, well, then most of those are false because we know ourselves better than any outside media, any person outside of ourselves, yes, including our spouses, our kids, our parents. You are the one who knows yourself most. And if you take that deepest part of you and travel back in time to when you were a child, that child who ran out the door to go play with their friends. Remember when we could do that? We didn't come home until the street lights came on. Think back to that child who danced in dance class like no one was watching. Think about that child who walked up to another kid on the playground and said, "Do you want to be my friend?" Think about that child who eagerly raised their hand to be first in line to run up to the chalkboard to answer that question. If you can't think back far enough, I assure you that person does exist. And that person wasn't yet assaulted by the media, by external voices, and by his or her own ego. That pure, there it is again, that pure person knows the truth. And that pure person knows that the truth is, whatever deep down inside you want is your purest, is the most sacred end of the path that you're on right now. And it has nothing to do with whether you are young enough, smart enough, pretty enough, whatever that means. Instead, it just means that if you have a goal that feels like you, that's as pure as it gets. And truth itself is always pure. Insecurities aren't going to go away. And ego always wants to keep you safe. But a lot of times, ego lies based on information it accumulated throughout the years. All right. I'm going to pause here for a second. And before we get into the 5 action steps that I have for you to keep in mind as you encounter the naysayers, I want to encourage you to consider, and this is where the sponsorship comes in. Again, it's me. I've been talking a lot about the Phoenix Yoga, but I want to invite you to participate in something that I've started recently and have really enjoyed. And it's my one-on-one manifestation coaching. So if you email me, Jennifer@jennifercoffee.com, I'll say it again, Jennifer@jennifercoffee.com, 2 N's, 1 F. Get in touch with me and we can set up a time where you and I can spend an hour together purely talking about your goals, your life, and where you personally intend to be. I've been doing this over the past month with quite a few clients, and I have been so fulfilled by assisting them in their journeys, giving them tailored action plans and blueprints for what they can do to get to the job of their dreams, to get to the life partner of their dreams, to get to a place of being more at ease and at peace. Whatever your goal is, I'd love to help blueprint a path for you. And this is where we really get to zero in and hone on what you specifically can do in your life as opposed to more generalized recommendations. So email me, jennifer@jennifercoffee.com, and let's set up your one-on-one manifestation coaching. Okay, commercial time is over. Now let's come up with an action plan. Hey, Jen, really appreciate that you told me all the different kinds of naysayers. Now what the heck do I do, right? Well, believe it or not, being able to identify those naysayers is going to already put you at an advantage because you can see it or hear it when it happens. We let information and comments wash over us all the time. And if you scroll through social media, you are bombarded by it. And those leave an imprint. But when we catch the naysayers, if you will, before they get to the heart of us, that puts us at a real advantage. You're already there. Now, let's go through 5 steps to take it home so that the naysayers barely penetrate your eardrums before you've sent them on their way. All right, step 1. I want you to think about these folks, and this is not an idea that I originated. This came, I believe, from Rhonda Byrne, but I love it so, so much. Think of these naysayers, including yourself, as personal trainers. When you go to the gym, and you pay a personal trainer to take you through a workout, you're basically paying them to make you miserable for a short period of time. I've mentioned this in the podcast that I did with my friend Kirsten Lindquist. I love working out, okay? I enjoy it. I don't enjoy all workouts, but I love yoga. I love spin. I love lifting weights. But even when I'm doing those, I'm cursing the instructor, right? Do you have to put me in chair pose for a whole minute? Do you have to have us turn the dial on that bike to make the resistance that much harder, right? I'm internally, I'm like, oh, darn you, right? Why do I keep doing it? Why do I keep going back? Because they're making me stronger. They're making me more flexible. They're making my heart stronger. They're improving my mental health, my longevity, lung capacity. I mean, do you need me to tell you all the reasons why workouts are great? But we keep going and we keep paying to suffer. You're suffering, quote unquote, so that you can get better, so that you can get stronger. Well, personal training doesn't just happen in your muscles. It happens in your mind. It happens when you read a great book and you pick up a few extra words, you get smarter. All of that is improvement. When these naysayers come to you and give you all the reasons why your dream won't work, all the reasons why you're too old to be in the dating world, all the reasons why, wait, you don't have a degree in communications, why do you want to be a public speaker? Whenever they come up, you are getting free personal training. You are getting handed to you an opportunity to get stronger and go, okay, there it is. Remember that the purest part of me is the part of me in my heart and soul that knows exactly what I want, and that's what I got to stay focused on. And the external naysayers, that's just helping me flex those muscles. You caught yourself in the moment, you saw it for what it was, and you didn't say all this out loud. Instead, you noted it and you got better. Again, you didn't have to pay them, right? You could pay a coach to, encourage you. And I encourage you to do that, right? You pay a therapist to help put your mind at ease. But there are also folks that you pay to push against you so that you get stronger. And here, you're getting it on the house. Those naysayers, including your own voice, are just there to make you stronger. All right. Step 2. I want you to, or encourage you to, see these naysayers and what they're saying as signs that you're on the right track. Okay, let's go back to that quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. To be great is to be misunderstood. If you think about any of these greats, think of Socrates. If you think of a philosopher who is vocalizing ideas that are contrary to anything that anybody else has thought, if he was saying those things and everybody just went, yep, sounds about right. Yeah, no, hello, everybody knows that. Boy, this guy's boring. Okay, if that was the response that he got from everyone, would we remember his name now? Would his thoughts be taught centuries later to our children? Of course not. No one who teaches groundbreaking philosophies is swept under the rug. Those words stick with us. There's a reason why the Bible to this day is the best-selling book of all time. But of course, all of those people, right? The ones coming up with the most amazing ideas, the world-changing philosophies, those are the ones who are often, if not disagreed with, persecuted. And those people are speaking higher truths. Now, you don't have to be speaking the highest of truths to have your own people who misunderstand you. But the more you hear, I don't know if that's the best thing for you. See that as a sign that maybe you're just doing something different, and that can be a really great thing. So if we're just cruising along and nobody's taking note, it's okay, keeps you safe. But when you start to hear people question, that's probably a sign that you're onto something. All right, number 3. Of course, I love my quotes, right? Here's one from Mandy Hale. You don't have to show up to every argument you're invited to. This is a very simple idea that has really caught on lately, and we have Mel Robbins to thank for it, the let them theory, right? The idea that just because somebody says something to you that is an insult or condescending or questioning your path, just because they say that, it doesn't require a response. This is nothing new. You've heard this before, right? When we were bullied in school and our parents said, just ignore them, right? It's hard. But what did we say about the hard things? Make us stronger. I often like to think of when a person on social media says something negative to me. I imagine being in a foreign country, and if someone, let's say I was in Greece, if somebody shouted an insult to me in Greek, I don't speak Greek, so it would just wash over me. They're shouting obscenities at me, and unless they're actually assaulting me, if I hear those words, I would just go, okay, right? Well, what they're saying could be very harmful, very hurtful, very insulting, but it's a foreign language, buddy. Can't help you. You didn't get in. Well, someone's insulting me in English, it gets in, but I realize it doesn't mean I have to respond. And I pretend that it came to me in a foreign language. And if it came to me in a foreign language, it would mean nothing. We don't have to let everything that a naysayer says get all the way in to where we actually start to question our intentions and our path. You don't have to show up to every argument you're invited to. And by the way, this is really great advice even outside of the conversation around law of attraction and making your dreams come true. People may needle you all the time and make passive-aggressive comments and try to get a reaction out of you. Remember that those people live only to feel that reaction that you're giving them. And if they are that deprived of emotional depth, well, really, we should feel sorry for them. But our focus right now is how to move on and stay on the path. So for now, moving on means not showing up to the argument you were invited to. Okay. Step 4. I'd like you to think about, I've talked about this before, someone whom you deeply admire. Could be an author, could be a religious figure, could be a family member, could be your best friend, a teacher that you had in high school. As I mentioned before, for me, I consider one of my mentors to be Dr. Wayne Dyer, a man I only met for all of 3 minutes, but his writings are so inspiring to me that I often think to myself, how would he respond if somebody said this to him? How would he respond if somebody said, Jen, are you sure you want to get on Bumble? Because it's mostly the youngins on there. Or, you're already 49. Maybe just call a day and be single, right? Because, God, dating is like so, it's awful, right? How would Wayne Dyer respond if somebody was telling him, just don't bother. Like, it's challenging out there. And I don't see someone as wise as him going, how could you say that to me? Or, here, let me show you all the evidence why you're wrong. Or going home and letting it get to him to the point where he goes, you know what, I'm not going to do that thing. I'm not going to try. They're right. Instead, I imagine Dr. Wayne Dyer going, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it that way. Thanks for letting me know. And then just moving on and not letting it get to him, right? If you're a very deeply faithful person, if you're a Christian, you may think, what would Jesus do, right? Remember when we all had the bracelets? And what a beautiful reminder. What would a person who is acting from love and is very wise, think of a girlfriend that you have, and she just always has that air of confidence about, like, nothing seems to get to her, right? What would that girl do? What would that woman do? And I think about that. Sometimes I even think about what the version of myself that I aspire to be would be, right? Jen living her highest life. How would she respond? And when I think of that, I go, oh yeah, she wouldn't let it get to her. She's not going to let that ruin her day. She's not going to respond in an equally negative way, fight and fire with fire. She would just go, mentally, that's unfortunate for you that you think that. I hope you become enlightened and move along on her path. Think of that person or people whom you admire and ask yourself how they would respond. It gives you an extra dose of bravery too, because you all of a sudden you start to think of that person as being an ally of yours who's there with you all the time. And they are in spirit, I like to think. Okay, here we go. This is number 5, and it's also 5 words. I've shared this in an Instagram live before. If you were there for that Instagram live, I still intend to make the bracelets because someone on the live suggested that I make bracelets with this on it. Before I get to those 5 words, not to overly tease this, but there is a backstory. And it has to do with my time at QVC when I was a host. When I was first starting out as a host at QVC, there was a producer who was he was a drill sergeant, okay? He was all business and very focused. And when I would be on the air, I would hear this producer in my ear, just kind of like, just very short sentences, right? Do this, say this, wrap it up. Okay, well done, And it was intimidating to me, right? Because I'm like, does this guy like me or not like me? Am I doing a good job? I don't know, right? And I start to question myself and my abilities, which I was doing already because I'm new to the job and I'm nervous, right? But this guy's all business, a great producer, always just cranking out great shows. But I felt like he was a tough nut to crack. He really scared me, right? 13 years later, that producer ended up being one of my closest friends at work, and just an amazing guy. Smart, funny, compassionate, skilled. And it took a while before I realized that when it came to running a show, he was all business. And when it came to life outside of work, he was just a really cool dude. Well, I made it my mission. I told him this later. I made it my mission to warn all of the new hosts about this producer so that they didn't have to have the frightening boot camp situation that I had. We'd get a new host in and I'd say, let me warn you about this one producer, because he's actually a teddy bear. He's a really sweet guy. He's not going to come across that way. He's going to scare the daylights out of you. I don't care how long you've been in the business. He's going to scare you. And it became like this running joke, oh, did Jen warn you about this guy yet? And yeah, I teased him about it. I'm like, I figured you out, and I'm not going to let you get to these hosts. And to this day, he will say, I don't know what you're talking about. But I know he does. Well, that ended up being a really great guy. But I want you to think about 5 words when you are faced with actual naysayers, right? The ones that maybe aren't teddy bears. When someone comes to you and says, you can't have that dream, you're not good enough, that's probably going to go to somebody who's more skilled. Or you're too old for that. You're too young for that. You can think of all the things that people have said to you in the past, right? And they probably took you by surprise, especially if it was some random comment online. When you are met with that opposition, I want you to think these 5 words. They warned me about you. They warned me about you. Now, who's they? Well, they is me. They are the people who truly believe in you. They are your guardian angels. They are your spirit guides. They are your higher power. All of the people who really support you, they're warning you that those folks are going to be in your path, and they are going to be there to make you stronger. They're going to be there to remind you why you set this goal. They're going to be there to help you regain focus. They're warning you by having those folks show up in the first place. If I didn't have that boot camp drill sergeant, I wouldn't have gotten better at what I did as fast as I did, right? And again, this producer's a great guy. And some of those naysayers that you have, they're going to end up being really great allies. Some are not. But no matter who they are, that passive-aggressive relative, even the spouse who feels intimidated by the path that you're going down because they're insecure and they're worried they're going to lose you. There's so many reasons why people might say, don't go for it. But every time they're speaking from their own insecurities, and they don't know the real you who is meant to have all her dreams come true. And the ones who are true allies, they're warning you about them. So when you hear it, instead of responding, think, they warned me about you. And then choose to respond. Or simply say, thanks for that advice. I appreciate that. Now you're armed. And I don't mean that in a combative way. I mean, you have your resources. You have your toolkit. Let's recap. See them as your personal trainers. See them as signs that you're on the right path. Know that you don't have to show up to every argument you're invited to. Question, how would my mentor respond? And remember, all the folks who love you warned you about them, and now you're ready. So if you don't know what that goal is yet, you have your vision board that you need to create, that nighttime meditation that we talked about in previous episodes. I think that was episode 1. You have me as your one-on-one consultant. Should you need it, remember Jennifer@jennifercoffee.com. And you have time. If you don't know what that goal is yet, it's okay. Simply knowing that you want more, that you want better, well, yeah, that already puts you in such a beautiful position because you're open to receive the next beautiful part of your life. And now you're ready. Well, ready for the next episode anyway, right? In next week's episode, I'm going to talk about another question that I get a lot, which is, hey, Jen, what do you mean when you talk about the universe? Like, thank you, universe. I say it all the time, right? Or the universe wants you to succeed. What does that mean? And what does that mean for me? Well, I'm going to talk about that in our next episode. In the meantime, keep dreaming big and know that I'm cheering you on because I know you can do this because you are not alone. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.